Tonight we're looking at Samma-vitaka, which is usually translated as right thought. Recently I heard someone say, oh no, right thought's probably not a good translation. And I almost changed it. I almost put something different, but I changed it back. Because it's simple. Right thought's easy to remember. It's not a mouthful like anything else. And thought is an interesting word. It's a good word because of how many uses we have for it. We use thought. When we say right thought, immediately we think of a thought, right? I like turtles. That's a thought, for example. We have a thought arise, and we think, well, that's what we mean by thought. But when you think of what you think about something, we also use that for thought. I think Buddhism is good. I think meditation is great. That's a judgment, we would say. Or I'm thinking about suicide. I'm thinking of killing myself. Well, it's not just a thought, it's an inclination. And it's the inclinations, I think, that we're most concerned with here. This monk was right, that right thought is a dangerous translation. It's a problematic translation, because we're certainly not talking about thoughts, and it gives the idea that a thought itself can be wrong. If a thought arises in your mind, I wonder what it would be like to kill myself, or maybe the answer to life's problems is to kill myself. A thought like that can arise, or you imagine doing something terrible, you think about killing someone, and just the thought arises. It can arise without any inclination on your part to do it. You can be horrified by the thought, or just find it ridiculous that you would think such a thing. And that's important, because the thoughts themselves are not a problem. And that's important to get across. Meditators often feel very guilty about their thoughts. You think of something and you think, that's so wrong to think that. I shouldn't think that as a meditator. That's not the problem. What we're really concerned with here is your inclinations. Are you inclined to kill yourself? Are you inclined to kill someone else? If so, there's a problem. Are you inclined to think of these things as problems? Well, that's a problem as well. It's our judgments and our reactions, really. So this is what we talk about, Samma-vitaka, is being free from these. Having the opposite kinds, having good kinds of inclinations, inclining towards meditation, inclining towards being kind to others. Good inclinations. Good thought is, right thought is the other member of the wisdom faculty, the wisdom group of the Eightfold Noble Path. So we have right view and then right thought. It's important to understand the distinction. Right view is what you believe. I believe this is right, I believe this is wrong. I should kill myself. I should kill that person. It's right to do. Killing is good. Stealing is good. Getting angry, that's a good thing. This is all wrong view. Right view is when you say, when you know, anger, that's not useful. It's a cause for suffering. Desire, that's also not useful. That's your view. when you know these things to be true. It's actually a lot easier. I mean, it's very difficult even to come to that view. That's something we should all be quite happy about and confident about, the fact that we're in a state where we think meditation is good, right? We have this view that meditation is beneficial and that getting caught up in the world is problematic. But it's much more difficult, and it's a whole other thing to give up the inclination for those things, right? You can know that a drug addict knows that the drugs are really, really a bad idea. But it doesn't mean they don't do drugs. They're all the time doing them, all the time that they're doing them, they know that this is wrong, this is a problem. But they still do the drugs. It's because they don't have right thought yet. They have right view, but they don't have the right inclination. And that's what we work on in meditation, really. It's where our meditation practice takes place. Along the way, right view comes up, and right view cuts off the inclination. So when you're first meditating, you don't have either, but you work on the right inclination. You incline yourself to understand things. You incline yourself towards meditation. You say, okay, well, I'll try this. Maybe it's a good thing. The right inclination, and so you work at it. You work at purifying your mind, stopping your reactions. You work at being objective towards things, and after you do that, eventually right view arises. With the realization of Nibbana, right view arises. You say, yes, these things are good, and yes, those things are bad. And that right view supports your right intention. But then you have to work. You have to work on the right intention again, and only this time now you know that it's wrong. But even someone who's seen Nibbana, still gets greedy, still gets angry, still has wrong inclination, potentially, until they work it out completely. The Buddha likened it to someone who is wearing clean white clothes and perfumed and really concerned about cleanliness. But then they're walking down this path, and an elephant, suddenly they see a bull elephant charging at them. And they look off to the side of the path, and there's a cesspool. Cesspools are where there's feces and urine and lots of gross things. And they jump into the cesspool to avoid the charging elephant. This the Buddha likened this sort of thing. A Sotapanna knows that it's wrong, knows that these things are wrong, but in order to get away from the kilesa, the anger is overwhelming, the fear is overwhelming, the greed is overwhelming, the desire, the lust, they do it. But once they do it, they feel awful. They feel dirty, they feel disgusted. They'll never say to themselves, that was a good idea. Well, it breaks down there, because the person who jumped in the cesspool, probably it was a good idea to avoid the elephant. But I suppose you could go further and say it's like they knew that the right thing to do would be to somehow tame the elephant, right? So, but they weren't strong enough to tame that elephant. So they jumped into the cesspool, and they know it wasn't a good thing. It wasn't pleasant. They're not happy about having jumped in the cesspool. That's how it becomes as you practice. It's important to understand the orderliness of this. The first thing to go away is wrong view. In the beginning, it's wrong view. It goes away because you have faith. I believe in what the Buddha taught. And that gives you enough of confidence to cultivate right thought, right intention. But once you hit the Arya Magga, the noble path, wrong view is cut off. So never again will you think, you'll never doubt, is it right to get attached to things? Is it right to desire after anything in the world? You won't have that thought, or you won't have that view, but you'll still desire those things. You'll still get angry, and these things will still come up, but you'll feel awful afterwards. You'll see. The Buddha mentions 3 types of sammavitaka. I'm sorry, sammavitaka. I'm using the wrong translation. Sammasankappa. I'm mixing up my translations here. The Pali word is not vitaka. It's the same thing, but sankappa. Sankappa is the samaditi, sammasankappa. See what a teacher I am. Sammasankappa means the same thing, right thought. So the 3 kinds of right thought are nekama sankappa. They're also called vitaka somewhere else. Nekama sankappa, abhayapada sankappa, and avihingsa sankappa. Nekama is the inclination to renounce, to give up, the inclination to let go. Abhayapada sankappa is the inclination to not get angry, inclination not to hate people or hate things. And avihingsa sankappa is the inclination not to be cruel. And I'm still not clear exactly the difference between abhayapada and avihingsa, but it's clear what the or abhayapada and vihingsa, but abhayapada it means metta. And the commentary says that not hating people, not being angry towards people is having love. It's the opposite of hate. And non-cruelty is karuna, is compassion. So I was trying to think how that differs, how it would differ to be angry at someone and to be cruel towards someone. And I think there are cases where it's different. Sometimes you just have disdain or lack of compassion for someone. You don't hate them, but you don't care that they're suffering, right? It doesn't bother you, it doesn't concern you, it doesn't move you to stop what you're doing. So that's vihingsa. You do something that is cruel, which is distorted, right? Because we have this inclination not to suffer. We wouldn't ever want someone to, it sounds cliche, but we wouldn't ever want someone to do that to us. And it sounds like, well, that's just a nice philosophy, but it makes sense, you know. You're not inclined towards these states for yourself. It's not something that you think of, hey, that's a good idea. Let's be hurt, let's suffer. The idea of it is repulsive towards you. But so to have that on the one hand, and on the other hand, to be perfectly fine with it happening to someone else, there's a disconnect there. It may not seem like it seems like a natural thing. Well, of course, dog eat dog, everyone for themselves. But the interesting thing is when you meditate, and meditation isn't on these things. Meditate means when you're mindful, when you learn how to see just ordinary experience as it is, a remarkable thing happens. You are inclined. It balances out. It comes into focus, and you lose this selfishness, which is, it's not real. It's not a natural state. It's not the ultimate balanced state to be only concerned about yourself. A person who is objective has no cruelty. They see their own suffering and someone else's suffering really as the same thing. They're not inclined towards either, and they're inclined to be compassionate. And the same with loving. They're inclined inclined to be loving. They're not inclined to be angry towards others. They don't hate others. They don't hate themselves. So there's not a lot to say. It's an important teaching, but it's quite simple. It's important to understand this distinction, right thought and right view. Samma ditthi, samma sankappa. Right view is our beliefs, right thought is actually our, in practice, what we incline towards. But they're related, of course. As I said, our right inclination leads to right view. Right view leads, of course, to right inclination. They work together. So this together is the wisdom. This is a person who has these two is considered to be wise. This is the wisdom, quite simple, no? The wisdom, the portion of the Eightfold Noble Path.